it out, it's just to get the job done. Cause in the wild, wild west, you gotta take
Hello, and
what's
welcome to the
yours,
OMO
leave it
comic book
behind
show.
for somebody
That is short
can
for
hit the
Old Man
floor.
Orange. Now, on Old Man Orange, Spencer Scott Holmes, my co-host, and myself, Ryan Dunigan, we just basically bullshit about comic books, video games, movies, music, and daily life type stuff, and try to have fun in the process and tell jokes and whatnot. Now, this right here is a spin-off show where we take a comic book out of our stack. Spencer and I, we both have this ridiculously ever-growing stack of comics. We just take out a couple we've been meaning to read, and then we just talk about it on the show. Just a one-man show, just bullshitting about this book and why we like it. Now, when I first started this show, I said we're going to try and keep it like non-Marvel and non-DC. It looks like 5 episodes in, I'm already kind of breaking my own rule. Now, I guess by that, just to clarify, to reiterate that to a certain extent, I don't think we'll be taking something like, okay, here's the newest, like, Batman, or here's the newest, like, Superman or Spider-Man. Probably something a little bit more random or something like that, or I'm not going to come pull in like, oh, here's Volume 5 of The Flash or whatever. I think that we could still probably go upon Marvel and DC, just maybe not the main obvious books that we're probably going to already talk about on the regular show. So this one, I got 2 for you. I got something from Marvel, as well as something from DC's new line, Young Animal, which is the kind of their independent slash kind of like, I guess, maybe it's Vertigo. Maybe it's kind of like the new version of Vertigo or something else, but it's basically the new line that's actually being ran by Gerard Way. So anyway, I'm going to jump into the first book now. So we're jumping into the first book here. Now I picked up Marvel's series Power Man and Iron Fist, and this is their current version of these 2 characters. Now here's the thing, I've never actually read any solo Luke Cage or any solo Iron Fist, but I remember back when I was reading the New Avengers, Brian Michael Bendis' first run on it, Luke Cage was a big part of that book, and eventually he was like leading the Avengers for a while. And after a while, he became like one of my favorite members of that team. So, and then Iron Fist was there for a minute because that had a forever revolving cast of characters. And then I remember the Luke Cage show on Netflix came out, and even though I didn't know much about the characters, that was probably one of my favorite shows as far as the Netflix original series. I mean, I'm one of those freaks whose favorite is actually Daredevil season 2, then probably Luke Cage, and then Jessica Jones, Daredevil season 1, and then like no big surprise here, Iron Fist. Now, I never had a problem with Iron Fist the character. I just thought the show was kind of meh. But from the comics I've read, I always thought Danny Rand was like a fun character. And this is definitely a really fun book. Like, I was just going into it. I don't really know much about the characters other than basically from the TV show, as well as whenever Luke Cage was on the New Avengers, and he was a pretty predominant character in that. Now, there are certain villains and characters that came into this, like, I've never seen that guy before, but I had no problem kind of clicking into it. This book, I'm going to say, if you like Marvel, go ahead and pick this book up right off the bat, because even if you don't know these 2 characters that well, it's just a fun book. I feel like so many books out there have to try and click in and just make their stamp on the Marvel universe or try to be part of some big event. And I was just so glad to just read this book. There was just a fun romp between 2 best friends. One of them just really wants to get the gang back together. The other is just like, dude, I don't want to. I'm just not, I love you, man, but I'm just not in the mood for this shit. And it's just an all-around fun book. Now, the book is written by David Walker and Sanford Greene. Now the artwork in this thing is just very fluid. It has this kind of scratchy look to it, yet it looks like the characters are very bendable and very flexible, even if you do got some bigger, bulkier characters like Luke Cage or Lonnie Lincoln, Tombstone. Because they just have this, it looks kind of like, to a certain extent, kind of like a Greg Capullo type of style to a certain extent. I know his stuff looks a little bit more square, and his thing is he always wants characters to be proportional, but still like look very fluid, very interesting. I'm gonna say it looks kind of like that, maybe just a little bit more cartoony and has a little bit more of this kind of like rough sketchiness to it. But I absolutely love the artwork and it matches the writing. The writing is very much like a buddy cop movie to a certain extent, and I just love that Danny Rand is just this go happy guy who just wants to go hang out with his buddy, and Luke Cage is the guy who just wants to for things to be simple. He just wants to chill with his lady and be a dad, while Iron Fist just wants to go out and just stop crime and do things like they used to do back in the old days. And they have multiple times they flash back and you see them in their old costumes back when they were doing this shit back in the 70s. Now, the story to this is their secretary, back when they used to run Heroes for Hire, she was in prison because she was actually, now this relates back to some older history, but this is one of those things I had no trouble. If you read enough comics after a while, they can give you someone's backstory and be like, oh, okay, I don't have a problem following that. So I think sometimes people have this fear that there's too much things to kind of go back on and keep track of. But this really, at no point did I feel lost or confused. Their secretary just got out of jail, and she's talking about how she doesn't have a whole lot, and she wants this necklace that she lost, and it's very sensitive, it's very personal to her, and the person who has it is Tombstone. Now, I don't know a whole lot about Tombstone, Lonnie Lincoln. I know that the first time I read him was in Deadpool Suicide Kings, and his whole thing, he seemed kind of like he was an albino black dude with super like strong skin. I'm not sure if he originated in Spider-Man or Daredevil or Luke Cage, but regardless, he always seemed like an interesting villain. So I'll say in this one, he seems a lot more scared and a lot more confused. And they got this thing with him where he actually is soft-spoken. Like, you can clearly read what he says, but it's in smaller print. And they make a point several times. They have trouble understanding him. But they make a point to what happens is, okay, Luke Cage is like, all right, well, I gotta go. We'll go get it. We're not doing this. We're not trying to start up the old gang. The name of this book is even The Boys Are Back in Town, which is awesome because I love Thin Lizzy. But the whole thing is they're going to get this necklace that he apparently somehow got. This necklace that belongs to Jeannie, their old secretary, who they want to look out for. When they get the necklace and they give it to her, they realize they've been kind of swindled to a certain extent. They got tricked into stealing this. It's not actually a personal item. It's actually this magical necklace, which he didn't know. He didn't know how to use it. He didn't know how to summon the demon or the powers that are inside of it. But the person who does know it, they actually learned it while studying inside the jail, on the jail system, was Jeannie and her friend Black. Is it Marina? It's not Black Marina. It's Miranda. She was the one of the villains, one of the main villains in Luke Cage, and they actually Black Mariah. That's right. That's her name. Black Mariah, who was in the Luke Cage series, and she was a crooked politician. As far as I know in the comics, she's always been kind of like the lady version of Kingpin to a certain extent. Just this big lady who's strong, and she was trying to rule things with an iron fist. Now, what's interesting about that is I never knew much about that character other than she was just a villain. But in this, they actually give her a lot of heart, because you find out that once Jeannie went to jail, just no fault of her own. She was possessed, and she killed Crime Buster, who was a shitty abusive boyfriend as well as a shitty superhero. And it was in self-defense, and she went to jail for it. She got out, and while she was in jail, though, it was Black Mariah stood up for her, looked out for her, and Jeannie taught her to get her GED, and they had each other's backs. And it's just interesting, kind of seeing this story where it's like, you're used to seeing these kind of stories like, oh, that's the villain. That's just the villain. We don't move past that. And seeing these two actually become really close because they have flashbacks back to prison. You kind of see why they like each other. So once they're both out, they get this diamond, and they're like, okay, we're going to raise hell together. Because you know what? Luke Cage, Danny Rand, they didn't come for you. I'm here for you. And it very much becomes a power switch. It seems almost kind of like Black Mariah is making Jeannie do this against her will, where it kind of turns around, and once she has this power, she starts to let it consume her. And Black Mart's like, whoa, slow up. This is not what I wanted to happen. And it almost comes role reversal in that aspect. In the meantime, Luke Cage and Iron Fist are trying to go down, track him, stop it from happening, and save Jeannie. Now, another thing about this book is the story is pretty straightforward. Usually, it's just the two, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, going from point to point, just trying to ask questions, and usually it just breaks out into a fight because they're asking the wrong guy. But regardless of that, it's just a fun story, and there's a lot of just funny moments kind of sprinkled throughout it. At some point, Luke Cage and Iron Fist get into a fight at a diner, and across the streets we see Spider-Gwen and Spider-Woman sitting on a building eating lunch, and then they're just watching this fight. And Spider-Gwen's like, should we jump in and should we help? And Spider-Woman's like, nah, only if this shirt gets ripped off, because she mentioned she has like a crush on Luke Cage and this and that, and they're just sitting back and watch. Like, he has it. It's fun to watch. I'll post this later online, and then she posts that actually plays in the story because people see that on Twitter and whatnot, and they say, oh, it looks like Luke Cage and Iron Fist are back, and Iron Fist is like, yeah. Luke Cage's like, dude, don't get your hopes up, don't buy into the hype, all this and that. And it's kind of funny. At some point, they go to Doctor Strange for some info on the amulet. He says, I foresaw you coming here. He's like, oh, you saw us on you spoke through the Mystic Waves or anything like that? No, I saw a post on Twitter, and I figured you guys become by because of this. So it's just a fun book all around, and I highly recommend anybody who's a fan of these two characters, or if you just like Marvel and you're looking to get into something a little different. Because my thing with Marvel is I always liked Marvel, but lately it seems kind of like they have a lot of like just event fatigue. A lot of just, maybe this leads into Secret Wars or some bullshit like that. But I'm just glad to see a story where it's not crossing over with anything, and it's just having a good time, and it still just has enough heart in there to actually make you feel a little bit of something. And the last issue of this is a fun one because it's separate from the rest of it. They just got the team going again. They agree to it to stick around for a little while longer. And what's up happening is you hear this radio program, and there's this villain called Manslaughter, and somebody calls in saying, hey, I just saw Luke Cage and Iron Fist take out Manslaughter. And then Manslaughter calls in saying, no, that's not what happened. I was just wanting a hot dog. And he tells his version of the story, how he's wanted a hot dog, and Luke Cage came in and fucked everything up. And then the hot dog vendor calls from like a hospital room saying, no, that's not what happened. Here's what really happened. He came shaking me down. This would happen. And then Luke Cage came flying in. And then, like, Luke Cage can fly? I didn't know he could fly. And then you see Danny Rand and Luke listening to this over the radio, being like, oh, man, people think you can fly. I told you that's why we need seatbelts. And they cut back to the day before, and you see they have, like, a homemade Fantastic Four car. And he's like, yeah, I saw instructions online, so it's safe. And it's just basically this Fantastic Four card colored purple. They're flying around. He turns real hard. Luke Cage falls out, lands on top of Manslaughter, and from there they just get into this big fight. And that's when, like, they come down. They explain the story to the DJ, and then Manslaughter comes in. Another battle breaks out, and it's just like I said earlier, just a fun read. So be sure to check that one out. And that is Power Man and Iron Fist. The boys are back in town.
Just lonely, hoping not for long. I got another simple plan to find my setting sun.
Now on to our second one. The last one was a fun, very bright, very colorful, very optimistic book. We're about to fuck all that up with this next book, DC's Young Animal, Mother Panic. Now, for those of you who don't know, DC's Young Animal, that is the new, earlier in the podcast, I believe you used the word alternative or independent. I'm not going to, maybe independent's not the right word, but I'm going to say Mother Panic almost feels like it could be an Image book set in Gotham. As in, it doesn't really, it feels like it could be its own thing. It just happens to be a Gotham book. I mean, something like Batgirl or Robin or Nightwing very much feels like it belongs to Batman. This character feels like she's much of her own thing. It just, she bumps shoulders with Batwoman a few times and Batman. And that's not a problem because it's a very interesting, very grim book. Now, I know it wasn't written by Gerard Way exactly, but I know that he was kind of overseeing it, and part of this was a little bit of his idea. He kind of came up with the idea for the comic, and I heard him in an interview, and he says, like, well, I kind of came up with the idea, and then I passed it on to the main writer, Jody Hauser, and she took it from there and made it much more of a defined character. And the concept of it is there is a young woman named Violet Pegg, and she's basically kind of like your average tabloid girl. Kind of like someone who's famous just for partying and a sex video leaks out, or going on talk shows making a bitch out of herself or whatever. And that's mostly what she's known for, and kind of using that as a disguise. Now, I read the afterword with Gerard Way in this, and he said that's kind of, back in the day when they made Bruce Wayne, he was just like, I'm just the billionaire playboy. Ha ha ha, you know me. Where this would be like, well, what's that? What's today's almost version of that? And that's just like, the entitled millennial drinking, partying, saying offensive shit, tweeting inappropriate things. And that's what this character does. She has a very public appearance. She's very hated by a lot of people, especially since she comes from this really rich family. And you find out that, I'll be honest, it was a little hard to follow at first because the flashbacks would happen without warning. Because usually, they might change the color slightly or the art style or something. But this one, they happen to like, oh, we're in a flashback now. But it wasn't that hard to pick up on. Now, I'm still a little unclear of, was it all in her head or what was going on? Because maybe I missed out some earlier clues. But she essentially shot her own father. Her mother has a case of early Alzheimer's, and her father's like, okay, well, I'm going to take you camping. And he took her camping out took her out hunting, and had an opportunity to shoot a deer. She didn't want to shoot it. Later, they're back at the house, and these flashbacks kind of come at different times, spread apart. And at some point, she has the gun. Her father's like, all right, honey, let's go camp. Let's go out now. He's like, no, you brought me here to that pervert. That's why you brought me here, for that pervert to have fun, didn't you? And then he says, honey, you don't know what you're talking about, this and that. And then she shoots her father. And since then, they have this they have the story like, oh, he was shot in a hunting accident. So it's kind of like, oh shit, like, did something actually happen, or was he planning to do something to her? So that's the thing. That's, and this book also has no problem saying fucking shit. I mean, some definite R-rated stuff happens in Batman, but for some reason, I mean, you could show like Joker walking around with no face or whatever, but God forbid someone says fuck or shit. This one has no problem with that. And they get across that she's a party girl, she's bisexual, and she uses that as her cover-up. She actually almost does that to numb it. Like she's almost not in it to better the city. She's almost in it to revenge. Because after the accident with her father, she is sent to this academy, to this boarding school, which is essentially trying to make the perfect soldier children. And and she's just trying to get revenge on that, and then in this process kind of like attack some of Gotham's wealthy elite. Last episode we did of this, Spencer was talking about Renato Jones, 1%. That's kind of has a little bit of this type of vibe. I'm going to say Renato Jones was a bit more extreme because I actually got the book recently and I'm not done with it yet, but I kind of see a lot of the shit Spencer was talking about. But this one, it's very much kind of like making the upper class look really shitty and kind of having one of their own turn on them. And that in itself is an interesting concept. But this one right here, she's trying to find the links to that academy and burn it down. And in the process, we learned that like she's not really so much, I mean, she has rules. Like at some point, somebody's trying to assassinate one of the kid pupils. She's like, no. We don't assassinate the children. They're the tools. We going after the people that want to use the tools. There's kind of an interesting dynamic with Mother Panic. Something Violet does is she loves her mother. Her mother is probably one of the only people she's kind to, but she tries to keep her safe and away from everywhere else. She lives in this labyrinth type thing, and like this labyrinth like building, and her mother just leaves her like almost in this kind of, it almost looks like a set to Alice in Wonderland. But that's what she likes, and she's not always entirely there. She's not entirely aware. Well, she's kind of aware of what her daughter does, but at the same time, she still thinks she's in high school, so talks to her like she's a kid. And this has a lot of small little nods. Like at some point, they bring in the rat catcher, and he's in there as an ally, which that's a real deep cut. I was kind of like, is that the rat catcher? That is the rat. Is that? Am I thinking is that a different rat? Okay, they just changed them. All right. So this book, there's also another part where. This is probably one of my favorite parts. They get across that even though that she kind of hates the upper class of Gotham, she will go drink and she will go fuck just to kind of just to nullify everything else in her life that she hates. And she goes home with this one guy. They have fun, and he's like, "Gee, I don't care." Like he's about to open his heart up to her, and he's like, "I don't care." And at some point, she goes to the restroom, and she's in there thinking like, "Shit. This guy's gonna, I got a clinger here." So what she does is she gets one of his razors, she cuts her finger, and then next shot, we see there are like, not smiley faces, but kind of like a face frowning with X's in its eyes, painted in blood all over the guy's room, and the guy's like in the fetal position on like in the bed, just like clenching in deep fear. It's like, that'll keep him from calling me. So it's just fucked up, weird little things like that in the book that are funny as well. Now, I'm going to say, not nearly as much humor in this as there is in Power Man and Iron Fist. But a couple of little moments like that, which kind of lighten it up. This uses a lot of like macabre type imagery as well. Like we kind of see a little bit of the bright, glossy, shiny look of like Gotham's upper class. But sometimes while fighting, they'll mix in some like what would be kind of like elegant looking imagery mixed in with like graphic, gory imagery. Like out of nowhere, when she's fighting someone, we might see what looks like a picture of a beautiful dove with arrows in it with blood dripping down. Or we might see a white rose blooming but with an eyeball in the middle of it. Or we'll see her punch the shit out of somebody, then we see a strawberry just leaking white shit. So it's one of those things where it bounces between very kind of, what's the best way to put it? I guess a very kind of elegant kind of elegant type of look mixed with like extreme violence. Earlier in the book, they make a point that she does not like Batman or the rest of the Batman family. She's kind of like, yeah, where the fuck are they when all these other people die? Where are they then? Where are they then? He thinks he owns the city. He thinks he runs it, but he wasn't there to save me. He's not there to save a bunch of other people. So fuck him. And ultimately, like I said earlier, her goal isn't to make the city a better place. Like if she saw like a crime, she'd intervene and stop it. But it's much more of a selfish reason. She's much more going in just for revenge and bring down the school. She'll often have flashbacks to what they did to her. And sometimes she'll just have, like, at some point, she goes and hooks up with this one girl at a club, and she has this image of this nun looming over her, and as the nun talks to her, she becomes more and more deformed, and she picks her up like she's kind of like a doll, and the nun has sharp teeth, and like, we're gonna put you into our new project. So, now there's two different styles of art throughout this book. The first is by an illustrator, Tommy Lee Edwards, and that has this very kind of 19 like late 90s, probably early 2000s kind of noir type of look to it. It has this kind of scratchy vibe to it. It looks very kind of gritty for what it wants to be. And then we also jump into like the later half of the book. It has a much more kind of cartoonish style, and the characters look a little bit more lengthy. It's not bad by any means. I mean, for this particular book, if I had to choose between two different art styles, I'd probably go with Tommy Lee Edwards. But the second art style is by Jean. I'm gonna butcher this name right here, so I apologize. Jean Francis Beaulu, Beauliu. Sorry, I'm an ignorant American here. So that is, yeah. These now what ends up happening now both art styles look fantastic. If I had to choose one or the other, I'd probably go with the first couple issues with Thomas Lee Edwards. But the second art style, the name I can't pronounce, I apologize, is still fantastic and still fits the mood very much. Now, what ends up happening is they kind of get across that there is a lot of, even the people who kind of go to a lot of charity events in Gotham are shitty. They go to a Gotham victims fundraiser, and once she gets there, she's like, this is where taste goes to die. And there we see a bunch of assholes, either with bullet holes in their head, like, you know, makeup bullet holes or wounds, something like that, or they're dressed up like Gotham villains. So that in itself just kind of shows you how kind of tasteless and removed these people can be. Another thing is, one of the main villains she comes across is this this lady who has no problem torturing and killing people, but she's an artist. She has a vision, and there's enough people that she pays off. They kind of turn the other way and don't pay attention because they get it. They're in the scene. So it's one of those things. I'm going to recommend people check this book out. It's definitely not for, let me say this. It's not really for the super faint of heart. I'm going to say I've read books more fucked up than this, but it's still pretty demented. I'm going to say if you're looking for an interesting new DC book, or if you're like, you know what, I've always kind of wanted to get into comics, but I've never really was into Batman, this might be kind of an interesting backdoor into it, because I'm going to say, even though it clicks right into Gotham, it does not feel like it has to be part of Gotham. It feels like this very easily could have been an Image book or a Dark Horse book or something to that effect. So I'm going to highly recommend Mother Panic. So that covers us for this week's episode of OMO Comic Book Show. Once again, I'm Ryan Dunigan. The two books we went over was Power Man and Iron Fist, The Boys Are Back in Town, and Volume 1, Mother Panic, A Work in Progress. Now we're closing out to music by Them Strangers, Spencer's old band, as well as Marshall, who was on the podcast a little bit ago. I'm going to try to get more of a full interview with him later, hopefully. Anyway, you folks have a great day. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Oh, maybe I'm just lonely, hoping not for long. I got another simple plan to find my setting sun, because we've been so lost and it took so long. It's all wrong, and now it's all too often that I find myself to plead. Let forgiveness be a virtue.